By early 1796, Prussia exited the anti-French coalition. Also, the war with Spain was over. Ceasefire treaties were signed with these countries. These days, the Austrian army was the biggest threat to the French Republic. The Austrians concentrated 170,000 soldiers at the Rhine. These forces were divided into two armies. Field Marshal Wurmser led the first 80,000 soldiers. The promising Archduke Karl led the second 90,000. The French Republic was able to move 150,000 soldiers to the Rhine against those two armies. These soldiers were led by the best French generals at the time, Jourdan and Moreau. This front was defined as the main one, and it was clear to everyone that the decisive outcome of this war would be shaped here. There was also a secondary front, the Austro-Sardinian army, consisting of 52,000 soldiers led by the Austrian general Bouvier, threatened France from the Italian side. In addition, there was still a threat of an invasion of a foe from the South Shore. A 60,000-man army was responsible for that sector, led by General Scherer. However, because nearly all supplies were sent to the main front, this army was in a very distressed situation and needed nearly everything. The soldiers stood at their positions for 4 years and showed the decay of morale and physical form. Additionally, General Kellermann's 20,000-man Army of the Alps ensured the protection of the mountain passages from the Piedmontese side of Italy. The foe's same-number army opposed Kellermann. On these mountain frontiers, there was a position struggle, and the parties did not undertake active actions. Hence, this theater of operations interested no one, as everyone paid attention to the Rhine. Only one man in Paris wrote instructions and plans for a counterstrike on the Italian front to the War Ministry. It was Bonaparte. He fiercely persuaded his superiors about needing to begin the offensive operation in Italy. By that time, Bonaparte had progressed further up the career ladder and was now the division general and the head of the internal troops of the Republic. His promotion was due to the events of October 1795. The Vendômière uprising started in Paris these days, which was a real threat to the government. The Royalists wanted to crush the Directory and restore the monarchy in France. Following the Directory order, Bonaparte used cannons to suppress that uprising decisively. After the event, Bonaparte became close to the Directory and had a close acquaintance with extraordinary war minister Carnot. However, despite such an important position, all thoughts of Bonaparte were directed only at the counterstrike in Italy. Yet his plans were of absolutely no interest to the Directory. They believed that the Italian front was horizonless, so no one was seriously thinking about the offensive operation in Italy. Despite that, Carnot paid attention to Bonaparte's offer, and soon the offensive operation plans were brought to the army commanders. Bonaparte was persuading General Scherer to go on the offensive, but Scherer thought that an offensive operation was impossible. The army barely had the artillery and the supply lines were nearly paralyzed. Scherer turned down all the received offensive operation instructions. He even threatened to resign if his army did not receive the necessary supplies and reinforcement. Have all these offensive operation plans be carried out by the one who made them? The Directory heard these words. In early March 1796, with the assistance of Carnot, Bonaparte was assigned the head of the Italian army. At 26 years old, he led the entire army for the first time. On March 9th, Bonaparte married charming Josephine. Just 2 days later, on March 11th, he headed out to join his army. Bonaparte's unexpected assignment did not enthuse his soldiers. Nobody believed that a young 26-year-old general with the reputation of a mysterious mathematician would break a practically hopeless situation in Italy. General Scherer is eagerly waiting for his fate. 2 newspapers informed us about his replacement and told us that Bonaparte departed from Paris with a large number of staff officers to take command of our army. I think that if this news is true, then the government has made a big mistake. I do believe that he has war talents, but they are clearly not enough, like his experience, to take command of the entire army as its commander-in-chief. Bonaparte arrived at the army headquarters in Nice on the evening of March 26th and took command the next day. The new commander-in-chief made an ambiguous impression on the soldiers. Some soldiers ridiculed him for his leanness and Corsican accent. However, Bonaparte started active work on the first day to earn the respect of his subordinates through his actions. These days, the army had an extreme lack of equipment and food. Scoundrels in the war administration were actively stealing supplies from the army provisions. The army did not receive many things it needed, and the exhausted hills of Piedmont were not able to feed the soldiers, who had not received their salaries for many months. The entire battalions did not have footwear, and all army transport means were boiled down to 200 mules. They had to exit this devastated region as soon as possible before the army completely decayed. Immediately after Bonaparte arrived, they started investigations against all people involved in the theft. The arrests of the war administration officials started right after. In these actions, Bonaparte was largely helped by his old friend Salicetti, and so very few scoundrels were able to avoid the responsibility. It is important that no scoundrel avoids punishment. For too long a time, the soldiers and the interests of the society were sacrificed to the lovers of profit. We need to make an example, especially before we head to March. Some scarce money that the Directory gave to Bonaparte was used for the needs of the soldiers. In addition, he pretty promptly contracted the rich merchants of Piedmont and Genoa, and accordingly some supplies were delivered to the army on credit. Any possibility was used to supply the army. I took command of the army. The administrative position of the army is bad but not hopeless. I must threaten the suppliers who stole a lot from the supply lines, and with these actions, I benefit greatly. From now on, the army will eat good bread and meat. The soldiers have already received large advance payments to cover their debts. There is still a lot of work to do to overcome great obstacles, but they are all surmountable. Citizens, all your intentions will be implemented. I will begin the march as soon as possible. Bonaparte switched from administrative to war tasks. There was a perfectly equipped 52,000-men Austro-Sardinian army led by General Bouvier against his poor army. The Austrian general was 72 years old. He was an experienced and brave general, but his main disadvantage was his lack of initiative and energy. This army was separated into several parts. The 20,000 part of General Colli covered Turin. The rest of the soldiers were distributed along the Po River. The Austrian army had 140 cannons and great cavalry, which was considered exemplary in Europe these days. For the offensive operation against these troops, Bonaparte involved only 38,000 soldiers from his army and only 60 cannons. The rest of his soldiers covered the shore and blocked the mountain passages. However, despite all the hardships, Bonaparte had one advantage, and it was inarguable. This ragged, hungry, and weak in number army had great power. This army had an outstanding number of commanders whose names would be very soon known to all of Europe. In addition to Bonaparte, there were Masséna, Augereau, Le Harpe, and Serrurier. All these generals were young and in their best shape. Also, Bonaparte assigned a man with extraordinary abilities in staff work to be the army chief of staff. It was Berthier, an officer of the extra class who had an amazing ability to work. A year before, Berthier was the chief of staff at the Army of the Alps and knew this ground well. Also, the list of the officers included young Lannes, Murat, Junot, and Marmont. It only took a spark to ignite that fire, and Bonaparte didn't wait for too long. Soldiers, you are naked and ill-fed. The government owes you much and can give you nothing. The patience and courage you have shown in the midst of these rocks are admirable, but they gain you no renown. No glory results to you from your endurance. It is my design to lead you into the most fertile plains of the world. Rich provinces and great cities will be in your power. There you will find honor, glory, and wealth. Soldiers of Italy, will you be wanting in courage or perseverance? The Italian campaign began. After his appeal to the army, Bonaparte ordered them to prepare for the offensive. Upon hearing this, the soldiers cheered up. The Directory ordered Bonaparte to strike the Austrians and push them back behind the Po River. He also had to defend against the Kingdom of Sardinia's army. However, Bonaparte considered that plan absurd. He decided to eliminate his weaker enemies first before engaging the main Austrian army. He quickly detailed an elaborate operation to do so. Bonaparte wanted to maximize speedy marches to approach his enemies covertly. An attacking group concentrated on nearby Savona and consisted of the divisions of Massena, La Harpe, and Augereau. All these maneuvers were carried out on the mountain roads above the coast. This tactical strategy was extremely dangerous because the English squadron was cruising and defending the coast. Having concentrated 3 divisions of 25,000 soldiers near Savona, Bonaparte wanted to make an unexpected strike in the center of the enemy and break through the front near Dego to separate the enemy troops. If Bonaparte seized the central position near Dego, he could focus the entire power of his army against General Colli. On April 9th, his army's headquarters had settled near Savona. The troops have been gathering and concentrating in the area. Bonaparte planned to start the offensive on April 15th, but unbeknown to him, his plans were in jeopardy. General Bouvier outpaced Bonaparte and launched his offensive a few days earlier on April 10th. The Austrian commander-in-chief decided to throw the French avant-garde away from Genoa and seize the central position in Montenotte. General Colli planned to move his troops to Millesimo. Such enemy actions could completely destroy the French plans. Bonaparte needed to rework his strategy, and quickly. On the morning of April 10th, the troops of Sebetendorf attacked General Cervoni's infantry brigade near the village of Voltri. Having lost 300 soldiers, General Cervoni had been forced to retreat. The next day, General Argenteau's squad launched a mountain attack, but that route crossed Austrian troops near the French garrison, who had taken up defense on a hill in an old redoubt near Montenotte. The garrison consisted of 1,500 soldiers. Colonel Rampon headed the defensive operation. Argenteau gathered over 4,500 soldiers to attack the fort. The Austrians led a fierce attack all day long with their overwhelming forces, but the French garrison stubbornly stood up in the defense. Argenteau threw his best officers to attack the redoubt. In turn, Colonel Rampon, to raise the fighting spirit of his soldiers, climbed the redoubt with a banner and swore to his soldiers. He gave them 2 choices for this battle's outcome: to win or die. Inspired by their commander, the soldiers oathed victory. Courageous Rampon kept fighting on that hill, demonstrating incredible courage. On the evening of April 11th, Bonaparte was able to concentrate the group near Savona for an offensive. Having learned that Rampon's troops were fighting with the last of their strength in the mountains of Montenotte, Bonaparte decides to strike immediately, not paying any attention to the soldiers of Sebetendorf. Augereau received the urgent order to start the offensive on the road heading toward Millesimo. Serrurier vowed to attack Ceva, and the most powerful divisions of La Harpe and Massena received the order to attack Montenotte. On the night of April 11th through the 12th, Bonaparte's army headed the attack. On April 12th, covered by morning fog, La Harpe's division general entered the heights of Monteleggino together with his infantry and took the position behind the redoubt. As soon as the fog dissipated, La Harpe's division led a powerful strike and hit the Austrians, which had already begun scaling the mountain. In a blink of an eye, the enemy's infantry was forced back down the hill. Argenteau immediately started to gather his battalions to fight La Harpe, but the Austrians were to face yet another shock. Massena moved his troops rearward to surprise the Austrians, having crossed behind them by maneuvering around the mountains' roads. Being armed with nearly 3 times the number of troops, the French advantage left the Austrians with little chance of survival. La Harpe led the attack near the front lines, whilst Massena spread terror in the rear of Argentu. It was a complete rout. Only a few hundred Austrians survived the assault and managed to escape out of the mountains. Colonel Rampon was rewarded with the rank of Brigadier General for his heroism demonstrated on that redoubt. This decisive and long-awaited victory filled both soldiers and their commanders with assuredness. Bonaparte immediately sent a message to Paris recounting his victory. Needless to say, the French were very pleased to hear the news. Citizens, the Italian campaign has begun. I must inform you about the Battle of Montenotte. After 3 days of maneuvers, Bouvier attacked us on the right flank. General Cervoni fearlessly withstood this attack. As soon as I learned of the circumstances of the attack on the right, I ordered General Cervoni to wait until night and retreat to the center with a forced march, hiding his movement. Then, the enemy attacked Montelegino's redoubt, which was our last fortification in the center. 1,500 of our soldiers fought for this redoubt. Colonel Rampon revealed the qualities of a great warrior. I moved the center ahead at night. On the dawn of April 12th, La Harpe energetically attacked Montelegino, while Massena attacked the rear guard of the Austrians. Argentu is defeated. 2 of his generals are severely wounded. Enemy losses total from 3,000 to 4,000, including over 2,000 captives. We also captured 8 officers and several banners. We lost 400 men. When I receive all the reports and have more time, I will send you the detailed description so France will know the names of its heroes. Long live the Republic! Argentu's squad was defeated. Bonaparte moved his army's headquarters to Carcarde and continued to sweepingly attack the center, not paying attention to Bouvier on the right. A number of orders followed on April 13th. La Harpe's and Massena's divisions were sent ahead to Dego. Augereau was heading the road to Ceva through Millesimo, where he was already battling the enemy's avant-garde. Bonaparte planned to connect Serulier's and Augereau's troops near Ceva, after which they planned to strike on General Colli. La Harpe and Massena had to keep Dego. Meanwhile, Bouvier, having learned of Argentu's defeat, did not have the decisiveness to attack Savona, but instead ordered his army to move closer to Acqui. In addition, to stop the French near Dego, he also sent the Vukasovic division. Victory hinged on who could concentrate more soldiers near Dego. Bonaparte was in a hurry and continued to break through the center swiftly. However, he soon managed to thwart an unsuccessful French advance. Not far from Millesimo, General Proveda's retreating troops took up defense in the old castle Cosedia. Slightly more than 1,000 soldiers found shelter behind its walls. This uncertainty on the flanks did not allow the center troops to make a decisive breakthrough to Dego. They had to secure the flank as soon as possible. And so, without any preparation, not even having ladders, General Augereau's soldiers assaulted the castle. Generals led the assault columns into battle. General Banel headed the first column, but the garrison desperately resisted. Having approached the castle, the French were met by a firestorm of ammunition from the rampart walls above. The attack was repulsed. General Banel was killed. Then, courageous General Joubert started the next assault. I can imagine nothing more horrendous than this attack, where I was wounded just as I was mounting the walls. My soldiers picked me up and, with one hand, I clung to the top of the wall. With another, I shielded myself with only my saber from the stones descending at me. I was a target for shooters from 2 trenches located 10 feet from me. Another assault ended unsuccessfully, and at the end of a very long day, all subsequent attacks were held off. The castle's garrison withstood. Augereau's troops suffered a loss of 900 dead and wounded soldiers. However, despite the courage of the defending soldiers, defending their position had become hopeless. They ran out of drinking water, and the garrison depleted its munitions from the day's battles. Under such conditions, they could no longer defend themselves. General Colli's troops did try to help, but their attempts were unsuccessful. The next morning, Division General Augereau, threatening with the full extermination of the garrison, forced them to capitulate. The garrison surrendered under respectable conditions. After officers gave their word not to fight the French for the rest of the year, they were released. So, despite a heavy battle, the French overcame their enemy and experienced yet another victory. Having dealt with the threat on their flank, the French rushed to Dego. On April 14th, Bonaparte again marched and concentrated his troops near Dego ahead of the enemy, arming himself with more power. The Austrians were only able to gather 5,000 troops to stand near Dego to face the 13,000 French soldiers waiting for them. Vukasovich's reinforcements did not have enough time to reach Dego by day's end. On the morning of April 14th, under the personal commandment of Bonaparte, the French brigades rushed ahead to Dego. La Harpe and Massena attacked with all the power they had. General Stengel's cavalry hit the flank. The first attack had predetermined the operation's outcome. By 3 p.m., the French took Dego and defeated another enemy squad. It was the third victory in 4 days, but Bonaparte did not stop. Leaving Massena's division in Dego, Bonaparte, together with La Harpe, headed west, where he planned to concentrate 3 divisions and crush General Colli. However, as soon as the troops started their march, things unexpectedly changed. Elated by the victory, Massena's soldiers plundered the village, drank, and had fun. Any discipline had been completely lost. Massena himself spent the night in a nearby village with one of the local beauties. In this condition, in the early morning of April 15th, the French were taken by surprise. Vukasovich's brigade, although they arrived late, still managed a rapid attack. The Massena soldiers barely escaped the village. By rushing out in their haste and disorder, they left all of their cannons behind. Massena himself narrowly avoided capture. At the last moment, he jumped out of bed wearing only a nightshirt. Vukasovich drove the French out of the village and took up its immediate defense. Bonaparte was an hour from Dego when he learned of the day's events. La Harpe was ordered to stop his march and immediately return. Bonaparte struggled to bring his troops back to order. The second assault on Dego started around noon. This time, the Austrians were fighting with singular persistence. They managed to fight back the first attack. The Austrians stood protecting each and every house. The second attack also died out before gaining traction, but Bonaparte was able to reacquire supremacy promptly. La Harpe's division timely approached Dego. Victor's brigade also joined the battle. Therefore, Bonaparte concentrated over 15,000 of his troops to fight against 5,000 Austrian soldiers. Colonel Lanuse's attack was victorious. Having lost 15,000 soldiers and 18 cannons, Vukasovich was forced to retreat. The French suffered over 1,000 dead and wounded soldiers. Linnaeus was promoted to brigade general for his battle efforts. Colonel Lannes also attracted Bonaparte's attention for his extraordinary valor and incredible bravery. Thus, Bonaparte successfully implemented the primary task and completely separated the army of the enemy. As a result of the battles between April 12th and 15th, Beaulieu's army lost around 10,000 soldiers. The Austrian commander-in-chief was confused. After suffering 3 defeats in 4 days, Beaulieu was standing near Acqui, not sure what to do next. Meanwhile, Bonaparte was acting with complete decisiveness. Leaving La Harpe to watch the Austrians, he rushed his troops to fight General Colli. All of these victories filled the French army with an amazing spirit and raised their morale incredibly. This tempo, impulse, and enthusiasm completely imbued the soldiers with the feeling of victory, and they all wanted to jump back into battle. Bonaparte was able to inspire his army in a matter of only a few days. The French continued to attack with a wide front. General Augereau, as the head of the division, assaulted enemy fortifications near Ceva. General Colli concentrated over 8,000 soldiers at this position and was able to fight back Augereau's assault. However, from the left flank, General Serrurier was heading in the attack. Massena and Stengel embraced the right flank. Due to the rising threat to the rear guard, the enemy was forced to retreat from the fortifications to a new position around San Michele village. Not having enough time to take a new position, General Colli suffered another attack. Serrurier attacked this position with all of his troops. After an intense battle, the enemy was pushed back. The French were victorious again and seized the village. With victory practically in their pocket, the soldiers lost their discipline again and began celebrating prematurely. The enemy took advantage of this and led an unexpected counterattack. The French were again knocked out from the village they had just seized. The offensive came to a halt. Bonaparte's troops had squandered an entire day, but he never lost faith in victory. I was displeased to know that your soldiers were caught off guard in San Michele village. I ordered General Daumartin and his brigade to move to your position. Daumartin will completely obey your orders. You shall attack together with General Augereau. Thanks to these reinforcements, you can wage a vivid revanche. You shall not lose your morale, my dear general. Because of yesterday's misjudgments, it shall only be a prelude to your victory. It is very important that you attack together with General Augereau. Work together. Sending reinforcements to General Serrurier, Bonaparte issued a series of orders aimed at preventing looting. The imposed measures were very severe. The division generals gained the right to shoot any looter on the spot, and these measures were enforced numerous times. The offensive continued. The common assault of the positions of the enemy in San Michele village was appointed on the morning of April 21st. Colli had 13,000 soldiers in their positions. Bonaparte concentrated 16,000 soldiers. However, the detour maneuvers of the French frightened General Colli again, and he started to retreat toward the town of Mondovì. When Bonaparte learned of this, he ordered his troops to immediately overtake the enemy. Colli's army somewhat tarried their retreat and did not organize a town's defense. Seeing that, brave Serrurier sought revenge for his setback, and not wasting time and not waiting for other forces, he headed the attack. Having arranged the soldiers in 3 columns, I headed the central one and, holding the saber in his hand 10 feet ahead of the others, he led the column into battle in fast stride. It was amazing to see an old but energetic general, whose power doubled in fury when he saw the enemy, led us all to battle. I accompanied him in the attack, the success of which was full. On April 22nd, the French gained another victory at Mondovì. The French cavalry, having made its way to the valley, completed the walloping. The enemy's cavalry tried to counterattack. The victory of the Battle of Mondovì was darkened by the loss of an extraordinary general. Stengel was killed. After that victory, the French finally broke through from the Liguria Mountains to the valley of Piedmont, and the worries about the provision of the soldiers significantly faded. Famine no longer threatened the army. After allowing his soldiers to rest, Bonaparte ordered them to prepare for the final march to Turin. The offensive was planned in such a way that all troops were within a day's march, so they could gather and concentrate their forces against any assault. The French army started its offensive on Turin on April 23rd. By that time, the Turin court was in total panic. Finally, something that seemed impossible just 2 weeks ago happened. The King of Sardinia asked for a truce. On the evening of April 23rd, Bonaparte received a proposition from General Colli to stop any and all war actions during the negotiations of the truce pact. It was signed on April 28th. According to its conditions, the French received a number of Piedmontese fortresses and, more importantly, River Po crossings. The first stage of the campaign ends here. In this glorious 10-day campaign, Bonaparte was able to oust an entire country out of the war. He received a series of fantastic victories. Bonaparte's adjutants delivered dozens of enemy banners to Paris. And at a time when the Rhine's main front did not show any results, the Piedmontese events stunned all of France. The people of Paris and the provinces were suddenly imbued with enthusiasm about this rapid kaleidoscope of victories, which names were so sonorous and melodious. All the glory, merriment, impulse, all these captured enemy banners flowing in the wind simply intoxicated the nation. The people read the news about the army and were amazed by the names, which sounded like music to their ears. Montenotte, Millesimo, Dego, Mondovì. Everyone was fascinated by these rapid successes. The name Bonaparte, which was hardly known to anyone the day before, was now spreading by word of mouth like wildfire.